North Korea is probably one of the most bewildering countries on earth. A tyrannical government that persecutes political opposition, no freedom of speech, arresting people for questioning the status quo, and banning political opposition. I'm sure glad that I don't live in a country like that, but just like every other state in the world, they are really worried about things that could challenge their power. Something that Kim Jong-un is very concerned about. One of the only people who could have posed any kind of threat to Kim Jong-un's power was his own brother, Kim Jong-nam. Un was always really worried about Nam after Un was chosen to be leader and not him. So he had to be dealt with. So let's talk about Kim Jong-un assassinating his own brother. Please leave a like and a comment on this video because it really helps me in the algorithm. But before we get started, this video is brought to you by Scentbird. Scentbird is a fragrance subscription service that lets you try designer fragrances every month and it won't break your bank because it only costs $17. Scentbird offers other affordable and flexible fragrance plans as well, so you can find the perfect plan that suits you. And if you want to skip a month or cancel your subscription, you can do so at any time. With Scentbird, there are no surprises, you get to pick what you want to receive each month. With over 600 perfumes and colognes with unisex options, you are sure to discover many amazing scents from brands such as Gucci, Prada and Versace, as well as some indie options such as Skylar, Heretic, Confessions and Rebel. My personal favourite fragrance note is likely cinnamon, but not so much mint or leathery scents. And while my best scent memory is not so much a fragrance, I do enjoy the smell of fresh cut grass in the summer. Thankfully, Scentbird allows me to choose my preferred scents so I can keep or remove the notes that I like and dislike. Each month you will receive a 30-day supply so you can try out a fragrance before committing to buying a larger bottle, which from other sources can sometimes cost anywhere from $150 to a crazy $500 a bottle. I received 3 different fragrances to try out. Firstly was Parisian Embrace by Sentier, which has notes of fresh peach, pear and brown sugar. Ebony and Cassis by Joe Loves, which has a very natural scent including notes of blackcurrant, myrrh and nutmeg. And lastly, Grandmaster by Mind Games, which has warm notes of incense, wild violet and blackcurrant. I really like the scent of Ebony and Cassis and will definitely be getting more of it. So, to support the channel, use code Dankula at scentbird.com or click the link down in the description for a huge 55% off, which is just over $7 for your first month. This service is only available in the USA and Canada. Thank you very much to Scentbird for sponsoring this video. Please click the link down in the description and show them some love. Again, use code Dankula at scentbird.com or click the link down in the description. There are a lot of different interpretations of the intentions, the outcomes, the reasons, and the what and why of this story, but I'll try to present it as clearly as I can because, as you can imagine, North Korea haven't exactly been very forthcoming in regards to information about this event. So, I'm going to try and keep the story as close to what the main parties involved have said and released. 2 young women named Siti Aisyah of Indonesia and Doan Thi Huong of Vietnam had both been approached to become actors and take part in what they thought was a prank for a Japanese YouTube show. The producer hiring them used the name James when he met them, but we obviously know now that that was a fake name. The prank involved the women walking up to unsuspecting men in public and rubbing their faces with cosmetic creams and sometimes baby oil, occasionally kissing them and then running away while apologising. Yeah, this is apparently funny to people in those countries, but it does sound like an awful lot of other prank and social experiment videos. Little did they know, they were actually being groomed by government agents to participate in a pretty major event that they had no idea they were part of. And they were trained to think of it as just a prank bro that they were being paid to do and not question what they were putting on people's faces. Obviously, there was no prank show, and the girls were unknowingly being trained to take part in an assassination. On February the 13th, 2017, Kim Jong-un's estranged half-brother, Kim Jong-nam, arrived at the Kuala Lumpur International Airport in Malaysia after visiting the resort island of Langkawi. He felt safe being in a foreign country, away from North Korea and his family, so he had no idea what was about to happen. Kim Jong-nam was the eldest son of Kim Jong-il, which obviously would make him the most likely candidate to have the leadership of North Korea passed down to him once dear old dad passed away. But Nam was seen as a bit of a joke to the rest of his family. The idea of him ruling North Korea sickened them and, of course, would cause a lot of envy. Also, literally none of them thought he was even cut out for the task. After spending some time in Switzerland, Kim Jong-nam had gotten used to a luxurious and indulgent lifestyle. He would rather travel than stay at home in North Korea. One of the most well-known stories of him embarrassing his family was the time that he got arrested for using a false identity while entering Japan because he really wanted to go to Disneyland in Tokyo. This made global news, and as a result of the embarrassment that it caused, Kim Jong-nam was stripped of all of his powers in North Korea. Because, and this part's actually quite funny, his love for Disneyland marked him as a capitalist. This caused him to lose the trust of not only his family, but the North Korean people as well, who hated capitalists. Mostly because it's illegal for them to have any other kind of opinion about capitalists. I mean, all he had to do was go down Splash Mountain like this, so everyone knew he didn't agree with it. And being a member of that specific family has a way of creating a very real paranoia, since none of that family trust each other and they very often like to kill each other. Either because if I don't get them first, they'll get me, or so they can be next in line for power. It's very, very Game of Thrones in that family. But the fact that Nam had caused a great deal of embarrassment, or because he was being detained by and interacting with authorities in other countries, telling them God knows what, meant that he was a problem that had to be dealt with. CT met her show producer, who was actually her handler, at a cafe in the airport to discuss the target for the prank. He told her that if she did well, then the boss would give her a big bonus this time. The handler pointed at Kim Jong-nam, who was wearing a grey suit that day, and said, "That's him." So CT prepared herself quickly for the prank, and the handler put a substance in her hand. She had very little time to comprehend anything other than to just copy the previous pranks that she had already been doing. It's assumed that Doan was also given the same information and had the same target pointed out to her. Kim Jong-nam was on his way to catch his flight at a self-service check-in kiosk, but was approached by both CT and Doan, who did the prank that they had been trained to do. They rubbed the oil all over his face like they had with all of the other men they did the prank to, and then ran off. What they didn't know, however, was that the substance that they had rubbed into his face wasn't cream or baby oil or makeup or any other kind of cosmetics like they had done with the other pranks. It was VX nerve agent. So, not makeup, it was fucking VX nerve agent. Maybe she's born with it. Maybe it's VX nerve agent. Kim Jong-nam was a lot more angry with them compared to the other guys' reactions from the prank, which scared the women into running away from him. But the reason he was so angry is because he had a pretty good idea of what had just happened. What makes this situation even more fucked up is that one of the women was wearing a shirt that said LOL on it in capital letters, which is a little bit fucked up considering that she's just murdered a man, but I'm sorry, it is kind of funny. But to be fair, the women did think that this was just another prank that they had done successfully, meaning they were about to get that big bonus. For those of you who don't know about VX Nerve Agent, it is an extremely effective weapon for assassinations, and it would be extremely effective as a weapon of war if it wasn't absolutely banned everywhere, since it's considered a chemical weapon of mass destruction. The Russians have actually used it to assassinate people on British soil. The first symptoms are sweating in the area of contact, then muscle spasms and a runny nose, and sometimes the pupils will shrink. A short time after the person has been exposed, they'll start to feel sick and eventually vomit uncontrollably. And a short while after that, they will experience tightness in their chest and struggle to take a deep breath since their throat has started to constrict. Essentially, what's happening is every single organ, nerve, and bodily function is shutting the fuck down. Kim Jong-nam immediately knew that something was wrong. So he got the attention of an airport receptionist saying that someone had grabbed him from behind and splashed something in his face, and that another woman had covered his face with a cloth that had been soaked in liquid. He was instantly taken to the airport's medical centre by staff, and at first didn't seem to have anything wrong with him, since he was walking perfectly fine alongside the staff on his way to get checked over. In the airport CCTV footage, a man dressed all in black was seen with a wheeled luggage case pretending to be just another member of the public. But he seemed to be very preoccupied with looking into the clinic to see the medical status of Kim Jong-nam. It's heavily believed that this man was another operative and his job was to report on whether or not the nerve agent had taken hold. He was not the only suspicious person in the airport that day, however. Multiple others were assumed to be operatives as well. They all acted as though they were just innocent members of the public, but there was just something off about them. And the airport CCTV footage had also caught them following the women that had pulled the prank, and of course, outside the airport was a getaway car. As I mentioned earlier, the two women, Siti and Doan, thought that they had just pulled a silly prank and had no idea that they had participated in an assassination, which was part of the whole plan because afterwards they were just all calm and chill and didn't act suspiciously after the attack. Kim Jong-nam's symptoms got worse very quickly, and the medical staff needed to use a resuscitation mask while they were taking him to the ambulance on a stretcher. The chemical attack had taken effect extremely fast, and while being transferred, Kim Jong-nam died just 20 minutes after the prank had commenced. At this time, nobody knew that this was Kim Jong-un's brother since he was using a fake identity. The only way they were able to confirm it was him was by using his DNA. Yeah, seriously, everybody thought that this was just some poor random man that had a heart attack or something. You know, not the brother of the world's most famous dictator. Most of the people that had been identified as operatives had already left the country while being escorted by a North Korean diplomat. The planes that they had taken back to Pyongyang were extremely careful about the route they took in order to avoid other countries' airspace where the planes might be grounded and the agents could be lawfully arrested. So the only people that seemed the most obvious suspects were the two women, who were very easily tracked because they didn't try to cover their tracks because they thought that they had just done a very funny prank. The police approached the women accused of the attack, who were both staying at nearby hotels to the airport, and they were asked if they knew what they had just done. And the moment they both looked confused, the police informed them that they had just been involved in the killing of Kim Jong-un's brother. Like, imagine hearing that, like, oh, we're going to do such a funny YouTube video, and then it turns out they actually took part in a pretty fucking major political assassination. Like, this news obviously caused a massive amount of shock to the women, and the media were in a frenzy trying to talk to them. But unfortunately for the media, the women were escorted by armed guards. It may have been for their own protection, you know, loose ends and all that, and the protection of others. But it's still a little bit strange and quite funny seeing a couple of little women being escorted by 10 or so armoured guys holding guns. Now, in Malaysia, as with most other countries, one of the worst crimes is murder. But unlike other countries, the sentence in Malaysia is death by hanging. So the two women had a lot of convincing to do without many other options. If they were found guilty, that was it for them. One other person was eventually taken in for questioning on the 17th of February, just 4 days after the incident. And this guy was assumed to be an operative, but this operative was a chemist, and he was thought to be the one responsible for supplying the VX nerve agent and giving instructions on how to correctly use it. His name was Jong, and he went through questioning just like the women did, but he wasn't detained. But while free, he got another visit from North Korea. He was eventually caught on camera talking to members of the North Korean embassy to come up with and rehearse his full story for future questioning. I really doubt North Korea actually gave a shit about the fate of this man. However, they did thank him for what he had done. He had fulfilled his purpose, but they had to keep close ties with him because they didn't want him giving away information on North Korea or implicating them in any way. The story that North Korea was going to push was that Malaysia was trying to coerce him into giving a confession. All of the charges were dropped against CT, mostly because they couldn't prove that she in fact knew what she was doing, and the President of Indonesia begged for her release. President Jokowi had a meeting with the Malaysian Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad to discuss her freedom. After the meeting, she was acquitted due to good relations between Indonesia and Malaysia. Doan, however, was still on trial, accused of murder and at severe risk of a short drop and a sudden stop. Luckily, she was offered a deal to reduce the sentence to causing harm using a dangerous weapon from murder, which she had no real choice but to accept since the alternative was hanging. She was given 3 years and 4 months prison time, but her legal team assured her that she wouldn't stay in prison for that long. Part of what actually proved the women's innocence was footage from both the airport and the North Korean operative embassy interview, and with the way the women handled the nerve agent, since they were being very calm and nonchalant about it and they didn't act nervously or carefully at all, which is how most people would act if they were carrying one of the most dangerous substances known to man in their hand. The Malaysian government refused to release the body immediately, and North Korea's ambassador Kang Cho accused Malaysia of collaborating with the enemies of North Korea over the assassination. The North Korean ambassador said that the outcome of the post-mortem conducted by the Malaysian government would be rejected, since it was being performed on a North Korean citizen without permission, and that it would be perceived as violating human rights, which is fucking poetic coming from North Korea. If their whining was not appeased, they said that they would file a complaint with the International Court of Justice. North Korea didn't want a post-mortem to be conducted in Malaysia for obvious reasons. They wanted the autopsy to be done by their own people so that they could just make up whatever cause of death they wanted to cover their own actions or to try and inflame relations between North Korea and Malaysia. Malaysia had to conduct the autopsy anyway since it needed to be done by law, and also it was a time-sensitive matter. So, despite North Korea's objections, the autopsy was conducted by pathologist Mohammed Shah Mahmood of Kuala Lumpur Hospital, which is likely why we know the actual cause of death today. Malaysia refused to return the body to Pyongyang until certain requirements were met. So relations between the two countries were looking very grim. In fact, Malaysia actually expelled the North Korean embassy and demanded that 3 people of interest who were hiding inside the embassy surrender to police questioning. And in the usual measured response, North Korea just held all Malaysians in their country hostage, at least until the situation was resolved. In order to calm the situation down, a deal was struck between Malaysia and North Korea to return Kim Jong-nam's body in exchange for North Korea releasing the Malaysian hostages. So, despite the fact that we know more about the killing than North Korea wanted us to, North Korea pretty much got what they wanted in the end. And they've essentially been allowed to kill one of their own citizens in another country with no real consequences. Killing Kim Jong-nam was thought to be a warning to North Korean ambassadors worldwide, specifically Tae Yong-ho, who was the ambassador for Great Britain, since he had made public appearances and talked out of line, which was against what the North Korean government wanted. The warning did work, however, since every North Korean ambassador from then on cancelled their public speaking arrangements. But the whole assassination was done very likely because of Kim Jong-un's paranoia of being succeeded to rule. The whole plan basically killed two birds with one stone for North Korea. And they got away with it.
It's Count Dankula on YouTube! Everybody subscribe!